Joining me now, Congresswoman Karen Bass and MSNBC's Melissa Harris Perry. Thank you both for being here.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Congresswoman, comparing Obamacare to Katrina, I mean, are they joking?
Well, you know, I just think it's really sad. I mean, you mentioned just a second ago, close to 1,900 people died. I don't know how you can compare a disaster where people died to a rollout of health care. And the other thing that we have to remember now, this is the 7th time the Republicans have looked at something that happened in the Obama administration to compare it to Katrina. So it is becoming one of their rituals, just like we voted 48+ times against the repeal of health care reform. Now every other day they're going to be calling everything Katrina. This is their 7th time they've called something Katrina.
You know, Melissa, you live in New Orleans.
Yep.
You lived through Katrina. I met your mom in New Orleans. To compare this, Katrina was about a president when people were suffering on live television that didn't come in. They're comparing it to a president that saw people suffering, that tried to do something and is trying to do something about it.
Yep.
It is absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, look, here is the comparison that works. Hurricane Katrina is like GOP resistance to Obamacare. And here's how. In the context of the Hurricane Katrina disaster, there was a disaster, a natural disaster caused by weather and storm and wind surges.
And levees.
But the big issues were the federal levee failure, which was a failure brought on by a lack of investment in particularly poor and black communities.
Right.
And then even after that structural failure, a failure on the part of the federal government to use the resources and capacity that it had to save poor people, old people, and people of color. That's what the Katrina disaster is beyond the storm.
Right.
In this case, the GOP resistance to healthcare reform is similarly creating a faulty levee system in our healthcare, creating a circumstance where our underinvestment makes everyone vulnerable, and in the midst of a disaster that is brewing, a refusal of the federal government to go in and help, once again, poor people, the elderly, and people of color. So on that, they're right. It is like
No, well, they're right about the analogy, Congresswoman. They're just wrong about who's the one that is doing the damage in the analogy, and that would be them, not the president.
Absolutely, and I think that that was a brilliant analysis. And one thing that I'd like to add to that is the fact that you have the outside organizations that have spent hundreds of millions of dollars to completely confuse people. So it's adding to exactly what Melissa was saying.
And are continuing to raise money. And then let me go back to what I was raising earlier, and when we opened the show, Congresswoman, former Vice President Dick Cheney. Now, he's talking about the president, and he's attacking him on Obamacare. But let's watch how he reflects about mistakes in his own past.
What do you consider your main fault?
My main fault? Well, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about my faults, I guess would be the answer.
He doesn't think a lot about his own faults. What's amazing to me about this answer and about this with Dick Cheney and this Katrina talking point that appears that's being used by Republicans is that, one, Cheney doesn't admit to doing anything wrong, but he can attack this president. And two, they're comparing it to Katrina when until this morning they were denying Katrina was a mistake of the Bush administration.
Well, exactly. And I think that this is an effort to try to rewrite history. I mean, now that Cheney is back on the scene, he wants to cover up from some of the absolute man-made disasters that he led in his administration. But, you know, you're really talking about a disaster that waits in terms of health care reform. The fact that my Republican colleagues are so obsessed about denying health care to Americans, so that here we are, the richest country on the planet in the history of the world, and we have finally achieved a level of development that we are prepared to provide health care, and they want to stop that from happening. and they are wishing for the demise of the Obama administration so that every other day they have something else to call Katrina. You know, it is also minimizing what happened in Katrina.
Absolutely.
So you are going to talk about it in this comparison. You're going to use it 7 different times. You are minimizing the death of close to 1,900 people.
But you also have this, Melissa, when you look at a guy like Cheney talking about he doesn't think about his mistakes, you contrast that to a president, Barack Obama, coming in front of the American public yesterday and admitting mistakes and asking to be forgiven and saying, now let's really not lose sight of the goal and let's make this goal achievable. Shows you a difference in presidencies and or vice presidents.
I mean, you know, you and I have talked about this before. One of the things I respect so much about this president and the way that he is conducting himself in the presidency is a willingness to actually govern even when folks are kind of trying to get him on something. So the great example is the Syria red line.
Right.
And he says, okay, maybe I said that, but the real question here is whether it is in our interests and even in the interest of the Syrian people for us to intervene. So whatever I said, you're just going to have to live with that. We're going to actually assess here.
Right.
But I will say that there is still a part of me at this moment who I am deeply concerned with the number of Democrats who do seem to be abandoning the president and any extent to which the administration gives on this. And it's only for this. Part of the reason, the necessity of the shutdown was the recognition that the Republican opposition is not there because it wants to fix Obamacare. It's not there because it wants the ACA rollout to be better and smoother. It's not there because they want the website to work. It is there because they want to destroy the Affordable Care Act. And so there's a part of me that thinks, you know, so I'm with you, like that's one of the things I greatly respect about this president. But on the other hand, I also just sort of feel like you have to say to these people, as you said in your intro, no, no. No.
And I think that the point becomes that because I think that to give anything on this is to act as though we're wrong about ensuring the people.
Yes.
The goal, the end goal is where you're trying to go, not those distractions and or flaws or bumps on the road. And to bring that point home, Congresswoman, you've got right-wingers rushing to say that Obamacare is the death knell, not only of Obama, but of liberals. Charles Kratheimer wrote today, Obamacare's unraveling would catastrophically undermine their underlying ideology of ever-expansive central government providing cradle-to-grave care for an ever-grateful citizenry. They're trying to turn back the whole movement of government being accountable and responsible to help its citizens. So any Democrat that co-signs this is suspect to me.
Well, and I think that's wishful thinking on his part, which really gets at what this whole thing is about. So, for example, the bill that was on the floor today, the Upton bill, really talking about you can keep your own insurance, actually what is a complete undermining of the Affordable Care Act because it allows the insurance industry to write new policies, and those policies essentially take the clock backwards and say you can deny pre-existing conditions, you can bring back the cap, all of the things that the Affordable Care Act is accomplishing, the Upton bill would send
But making Melissa's point, I'll let you quickly make another one.
Sure.
39 Democrats voted for that bill today, and we should not get political amnesia.
Yeah, and I just want to remind folks that even if you're hungry and you're thirsty and you really, really want to buy spoiled milk, we do not allow you in this country to buy spoiled milk. We have an FDA that says once this milk spoils, it is bad for you. That is what is going on with these health care plans. And it's like saying, okay, fine, people are thirsty, let them drink the spoiled milk. No, we have to say no to that.
Congresswoman Karen Bass, Melissa Harris Perry, I'm going to have to hold it there. Thank you for